Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you are a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is Herschel Rothschild, who is with SIM, and he's a friend of mine. And actually, Herschel and I have been getting to know each other for a couple of years now, and he's helped me recently with a public SRS boot camp. So, Herschel, welcome, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're, just sitting here and talking about a lot of different stuff today. But one of the things that I wanted to get on the mic is just you and I talking a little bit about people having healthy boundaries in support raising. That touches on a lot of different things. We're probably not going to be able to discuss all of it, obviously. But first of all, before we get into, just how people can have good boundaries, let's just talk a little bit more about you. Tell me a little bit about you, about your role with SIM, and yeah, just give us the once over.
A little introduction.
Yeah.
Really, I have two children. They're both adult children. So my wife and I are empty nesters, and we're enjoying that. My daughter's 20. She's at Texas A&M, and she's a junior there. My son is 26. He lives in Dallas. He's an entrepreneur. I became a believer back in 2000, and in 2003, I started with SIM.
Okay. And
we started as missionaries. We served in Nigeria for a couple of years working with street children. We wound up coming back because of just parental medical issues.
Okay.
And we wound up coming back in 2006 and then stepping away from SIM except as associates. In 2016, went back full time with SIM, and this time at a different role as a regional director. So okay. I have a 5-state area where I mobilize, launch missionaries, work on church partnership, work with conferences, and
great.
Work with our missionaries in the field.
Great. And you've helped to facilitate several SRS boot camps, right?
Yeah. At SIM, we do that right there on site in Charlotte. And now I'm getting the privilege of sharing with you and doing it at a public boot camp in Dallas or in Plano, Texas.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. I'm glad you're here and glad we get to sit down and kind of do this on the side for a few minutes. Well, tell us a little bit, Herschel, if you would, because, the listeners, they're all over, from people that are just starting out in support raising to the grizzled veterans that have lived off support for many years. And I know we have a pretty wide audience that might be listening to us, but give us a little bit of a snapshot about your support. Obviously, you're fully funded, but I know it wasn't easy for you as you were kind of figuring out how to raise your support. So tell us a little bit about that before we get into some of the good boundaries and all that.
Well, when we came back on and we needed to raise full-time support, being the second time, I really thought it would be just like the first time. And the first time it took us less than 4 months.
Okay.
But also one of the things I needed to account for is I wasn't really leaving the U.S. and I had no deadline because I really started working right away.
Okay.
Knowing that I may not be getting anything right away. So it took a while. It took about 8 months to get to where I needed to be. And the SRS class, though, really helped me, and it broadened my thoughts, and it made me see things I hadn't seen before, as far as, asking for referrals or asking for increases after a year or two.
Right.
And just things that were outside the normal box.
Okay.
So I loved that. And it really caught one of my values as far as one-on-one communication, though. Instead of really getting in front of a Bible study class or in front of a church, that's still awesome if you get the opportunity.
Sure.
But one-on-one is so important.
Okay.
And it really helps just be able to have a conversation with those people and have them join. Because when it's through a bunch of people, if it's everybody's problem, it's nobody's problem.
Yeah, so true. Well, as you and I were talking a little bit about boundaries and support raising, I know that there was a question posed to both of us earlier today, just even about the whole, what do you do with potentially sitting down with somebody of the opposite gender? Should you do that? Should that not? That's just one of several different things we can touch on. But let's start right there, because I know that you've had an experience that I think is worth sharing on the mic.
So my viewpoint really just got altered today, and I'm really trying to change that as I listen to you and talk about it. But my viewpoint is always, I sit down with men or I sit down with couples. If I'm by myself, I would not sit down with a woman and have a meeting and talk to them about joining the team and partnering with us. I wouldn't do that. And the reason was I want to be above reproach.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I really want to be above reproach. And I will tell, especially single guys for sure, never go anywhere with someone of the opposite sex that's private. I still think that's really important.
So true.
And I wouldn't do that either. But now I'm really just after hearing you rethinking the whole idea of meeting someone in public, as long as my wife knows and the boundaries are set up front, and just talking to them and having a conversation with them about partnering with us in ministry.
Right.
My stance on it before was no, not unless my wife was there. In fact, it's taken me 2 years as I've been trying to set an appointment with someone that I haven't been able to do that because of that reason.
Okay. Well, and we don't have to go a long ways down that road, but I think you hit it right there in saying, don't go somewhere private. If you're married, certainly let your spouse know and make sure they feel good about it.
Right.
We don't need to get too much into my story, but with my wife's very sketchy medical history, it's not been an option to have my wife help me raise support very often at all. But when those few occasions when I have sat down with a female, always very public. Always something my wife's completely aware, and there was nothing that would cause somebody to go, oh, I wonder what he's doing sitting down with her. But obviously, that's our situation has been a little different with that, and I think we're both still learning about that topic.
Always learning
how to best approach it. But there's a lot of other things when it comes to having healthy boundaries that go way beyond that. I know that you and I have talked about even just a little bit that sometimes when people are raising support, they can sit down and have a meal and maybe another meal and another meal and maybe never even leave the same restaurant and have a lot of meals. And I know yesterday you and I were talking about exercising. So tell me just a little bit your opinion, your experience. I know you're not a medical doctor or a physiologist or anything like that, but you've helped train and coach a lot of people in their support raising process. So observationally, what are some of the things that you've noticed when it comes to people's health?
So I know personally, and as I've talked to people, I have more energy when I exercise. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just not as tired. And I think it's important. I also make better dietary choices if I'm exercising.
Sure.
So I think we need to make sure we find time, whether it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And when we're traveling, you just do body weight exercises, whether it's push-ups, sit-ups, air squats. Anybody can do air squats, and believe it, if you try like 50 in a row, it's hard.
Sure.
So, I think you find time to do that, and you turn off the TV, or you just have time where you do that. It's important. I like making sure I get my steps in. So as I've talked to people, they get sluggish when they eat too much or they get tired. And I think it's really important as we go around to take care of ourselves, and it makes it easier. And you and I talked about also, when I'm exercising, for some reason, I need less sleep and I'm more awake and more alert.
True. So true.
And it's so important. So I don't need as much caffeine. And me on caffeine, not always a good thing.
I can imagine you bouncing off the ceiling. So
yeah,
you're a high energy guy. Well, I'm just curious if you've known anybody like this too. I had a friend a few years back, got fully funded. Mm-hmm. And he had always, and of course, he told me all about this later on. I was definitely not his weight control counselor or anything like that. But it was noticeable how healthy he got physically in the midst of raising support. And at one time, I just said, bro, you look awesome. And he goes, yeah, this discipline that raising support has caused in my life has changed me, where in the morning I have a larger goal than talking to Jesus first thing. Like I certainly spend time with Jesus, but also I'm going out his thing was running. I go out for a run every day. And I've also realized that I was going to get to too many restaurants. I was going to have too many opportunities to eat too many things I shouldn't be eating. So I started trying to make some better decisions. And lo and behold, I lost 60 pounds. And I was like, wow. And that just kind of happened out of being disciplined. In his words, the act of trying to actually set up 10 appointments a week and trying to follow up with everybody that had given him a yes or a maybe or whatever else, that allowed him to actually embrace discipline. And that even carried over to when he was at the dinner table, or when he was trying not to snack, or when he was trying to just get exercise. So speaking of exercise, what's your exercise of choice?
I like running. It's easy to do when I'm anywhere. Okay. Right. So here's a crazy one. I've had 2 appointments on runs.
Really?
2 presentations on runs, just the conversation and the ask on the run.
That's fantastic.
And so, it was my wife's idea. She talked to me about it. She goes, well, if you don't have time any other time, see if they want to go for a run with you. And I have friends that are runners, and they do. And it's a great time because you know what? Your phone's not ringing.
Right.
You're not getting texts, and you get to have focused time on that in
Wow.
a conversation.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I hadn't even thought about that. I do some bike riding and some basketball playing, and I haven't figured out how to do a support raising presentation. Now you got me thinking. So, well, thinking about, the different things that come with discipline and stuff like that, that goes well beyond just our physical body, and
Right.
what we can do or not. As you've coached and trained a lot of people now, tell us a little bit, let's put it this way. What have you seen that has been a healthy shift in people's time in their schedules? Because we know that when people really step into support raising, a lot of times they start giving up things, or they at least temporarily set aside things, or they make different habits and changes in how they approach their day. Speak into that, and maybe even tell us a story about someone that you've seen something shift.
So I think one of the best things I've seen is when they make their calls first in the day.
Okay.
Because it really helps them focus. And then it's the frog nobody wants to eat. So it's really getting it done first. It's the one bite of the elephant, one at a time, and you're getting it done first in your day and you feel accomplished. Whereas if you keep putting it off, you keep really putting it off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. It gets harder as the day goes on to make the calls. So I think that shift in people's mentality has helped.
Mm-hmm.
And also knowing that they need to make the calls to get the appointments instead of putting it off and realizing the phone isn't my enemy. It's actually my friend.
Right.
Because people think, oh, no, I can just text. And you and I both talked about this. Texting doesn't work.
No, not.
I mean, it's great to confirm the
Every
appointment.
now and then, but generally speaking, it's not going to help you set the appointment.
It's great to confirm the appointment because I usually get a text back pretty quickly on that.
Right.
But as far as making an appointment, it doesn't work. So I think understanding that they need to get on the phone and that reality, and knowing that they need to make the phone calls, and really that comes first.
Okay. Really strong to say that. Parenthetically, I have experienced, actually even personally, just the fact that I don't like the phone. That's something I've never shied away from, being just really honest with that. I think in my role, it helps for people to know that, Aaron helps train us and he doesn't like the phone either, but he uses the phone. So I try and be really open and honest about that. But I have found that I'll get really burned out if I'm on the phone too long, even though I know I need to set up those appointments.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point when I was really trying to get it done, I would set up 2 hours during the day, different times, 1 hour in the morning.
That's a great idea.
1 hour in the afternoon, or 1 hour in the evening if I didn't want to do it in the afternoon. And it just helped me to know, okay, I only have to spend 2 hours today, as you would say, eating that elephant. And I would get it done. I'd get my appointment set up during those 2 hours. But then the rest of my day, I felt a lot more freedom to do the things that I enjoyed doing or that were necessary, but maybe less painful than just like, well, just going to keep making phone calls,
But let's go back to something else you said that we haven't talked about this yet, but the bump and run. And you could do the bump and run so you don't do it. Maybe you do it Sunday at church, or maybe you take a spinning class or a yoga class in the morning.
Right.
Or you take a cycling class, or you go lift at the gym and you just talk to people while you're there and work on making appointments there.
Let me interrupt you real quick. I realize that some people listening to this, you've never been to an SRS boot camp, and that's fine. There's no judgment. There's just love. Of course, we invite you. But one of the things that we talk about at the SRS boot camps is what we call the bump and run, where essentially you just go where people are and you look for opportunities. And when God puts someone in your path, you ask them for an appointment. You know that kind of what you're going to say. You're ready to say it. You're not even sure who you're going to run into.
That's
but
right.
You put yourself in a situation where you can invite people to get an appointment with you for the sake of doing support raising. So it might be at church, or like Herschel, like you were saying, it might be at the gym or something along those lines. So as you are, let's stay on that time schedule thing. Have you found something that kind of helps people get started with their day? Because I know that there are some that they really struggle. It's like, I don't know. I got to make appointments. And then they kind of sit around. I mean, I've heard about too many people that kind of sit around and they're not getting going. What's been kind of the fire in people's belly that you found to help them kind of get going on their day?
I think knowing they have an accountability call to make on Friday or Thursday or Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And if they know they need more, they might be able to talk to their coach about texting them and asking them the question, have you made your calls yet? Mm-hmm. And helping them, and knowing someone's going to get that text and you're going to have to respond.
Right.
Or knowing that you're going to make that call and you're going to have to turn in numbers. I think accountability is key in this.
Okay. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the numbers, turning those in real quick, because you and I both know we've heard of mission agencies that are kind of counting the wrong things when it comes to support raising. They're just counting the dollars, which obviously people need to raise their support.
Yes.
Or they're just counting the phone calls. But there's a danger in putting too much emphasis on the phone calls, isn't there?
Yeah, the danger on just putting emphasis on the phone calls is not making the appointments, right? And it's not going to the appointments. So I think you've got to look at how many appointments are you making per week and have a goal for that, whether it's 5 or 10, maybe even more. And then once you have the appointment, making the follow-up, you really have to be good at putting it on your calendar to follow up. If you tell someone you're going to follow up with them after the meeting, if they didn't say yes or they didn't say no, it was a maybe.
Right.
You need to really make sure you follow up with that person and have a calendar and put those things in there, and not only put it in your calendar, but then follow your calendar and make that phone call.
That's discipline right there. That's something where you kind of go, oh, okay, I want to go on and do something else, but I can't let myself. I need to handle this. Like I need to kind of even have this healthy boundary on my time to not move on to a different phone call until I've even handled this phone call and made a note in my software or whatever else. Well, I know that social media is clear and present in our society right now.
Yes.
And that can be a good thing, and that can be a real problem for the support raiser. What have you found has helped people have a healthy approach towards using social media? And I'm just assuming an unhealthy approach is they're on it all day. They're reading lots of people's things. They're playing games. They're messing around. And they kind of get sucked down the black hole of not doing their job. And yet they need to get on social media for other purposes.
So here's the question, maybe give yourself time limits of 10 or 15 minutes when you do it, maybe 2 times a day, just to make sure you're not missing something someone's posting, so you can like what they're doing and follow them and be in contact with them. Maybe message them if they're not answering their phone, or even, as we learned today, you can make a call on Facebook.
Right.
Maybe call them on WhatsApp. That one I already knew you could make a call on.
Right.
And you use social media for your benefit, but we don't need to be posting a lot of things. We don't need to be posting or just trying to do everything through social media to make our appointments, because that's really not a good use of our time at all.
Yeah. Social media is not the key to getting or staying fully funded. It's a good tool.
Right.
But boy, if you misuse a tool, it's kind of like, you use the wrong tool for the wrong job. It's not helping you, and it's actually doing damage. So if you get to help others as they're raising their support, a fair question to consider is, who's helping you? Who's pouring into you and helping you increase your capacity and ability as a support raising leader, trainer, or coach? May I suggest that you be sure that you're a part of the SRS network, because it can be a matter of access. Access to a discount to the Support Raising Leaders Conference, access to the online course SRS Foundations, and access to the SRS Network member resource page. The SRS Network is designed to resource you and connect you with others who are also trying to develop support raisers for the Great Commission. Make sure that you are a part of the SRS Network. So Herschel, I know that we've been talking about all sorts of different types of boundaries and just healthy choices. And our goal for this is not so much to tell people what to do, but to help set them up for success, to help them make good choices that are going to help their body, mind, soul, spirit, the whole 9 yards. But let's circle back one more time on the whole time issue, because I know that sometimes people struggle, particularly if they're moving out of a really regimented job into something like raising support, which is more like a messy painting sometimes. Talk a little bit more about how people can set up a good work schedule and have a really good rhythm where they're not working 20 hours a day, but then also they're not just working a few hours a day.
Right. So with me, what I try and do, especially when I was focusing on support raising full time, was I would try and start my day by making some phone calls, maybe sending a few emails as follow-ups, and maybe sending to my newsletter someone I just met with the day before, because I want to follow up and thank them for that meeting. But then If I need a break, maybe go grab a coffee or go out for a walk, but be intentional about how long I have for that and come back and get back on the phone and back in emails and spending time in there. Even if I hit my goal for that week of 10 appointments or I made my 20 calls that day, I want to go further than that, because if I'm in a rhythm, I want to keep that going and use the momentum and motivation to work forward. And people will hear that. And they'll sense that as you talk to them, and the excitement will come across that God is working in you that day and he's really changing something. And so being motivated for that. And then you might have a call that since you've already done it, maybe you don't have just to spend 2 minutes on the phone when you get them on the phone. Maybe someone's having an issue and you get to talk to them and really listen. And you take that time and pour into them and hear what God's doing in their life. And so you get to be intentional.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I think that time management thing is probably a skill set that most people have or they need to develop at some point.
Right.
But you really realize how great you are or aren't at it rather quickly when you move into the support raising thing.
Very quickly.
And that kind of brings me where I think I'd like to close today too, is just the whole matter of walking closely with the Lord. We say repeatedly around support raising solutions, being spiritually healthy is by far the most important thing. We want you to be vision driven. We want you to be fully funded, but it really comes out first of your relationship with Jesus. How does the support raiser not just be busy doing ministry, but keep that good rhythm in their schedule of just connecting with the Lord daily?
So for me, God, someone taught me this a long time ago in ministry. God has to be first. He has to maintain first place in my life above everything else, above ministry. Because if we put our ministry above God or our support raising above him, we're really going backwards and we're going to fail. So we need to keep in the word. We need to stay in prayer. Maybe getting together with someone and talking about what God's doing in your life. Like I said, accountability. If you're married, talking with your spouse about where you see God through the situation, through the support raising, how that's going.
So true.
And maybe even seeing if they're having a struggle, or you could talk to them openly about your struggle and seeing where they're seeing God working through you in this. So I think we need to do that. And you know what? As we're talking to people on the phone, it's amazing the things that can come up in conversation, and you realize that it's a God detour, right? It's no longer about the support raising. It's no longer about anything else. It is truly about that person and their relationship with their Lord or their walk. And maybe they're having a struggle with their kid, or maybe someone had a medical issue, and you get to speak into that and just listen and pray with them and walk alongside them and encourage them in that. And if we're spiritually healthy, we're going to be able to do that and sense God using us right there.
So much easier. So much easier.
And it's no longer about what we thought the call was about, but God knew we were going to make the call, and God knew they needed that. And we can be a breath of fresh air.
Amen. I think you and I are very kindred spirits in that way, that we're honored to have people partner with us, but we realize sometimes that partnership we're doing with them, sometimes it's about them. Sometimes it's about us loving on them. Not just what they're praying for us or giving in our direction.
Right.
So, well, Herschel, it's an honor to be able to do ministry with you and share some things with you sometimes. And hey, we even got to teach a boot camp together recently. So I love you, brother. Thanks for being with me today, and God bless.
God bless you, brother. Thanks for all you that are listening. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisingsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcasts from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.